With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is a great birth story episode of an unmedicated vaginal birth despite being diagnosed with COVID while in labor. Welcome to the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins, a board-certified OBGYN who's been in practice for nearly 15 years. I've had the privilege of helping over 1,000 babies into this world, and I'm here to help you be calm, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Check out the full disclaimer at drnicolerankins.com/disclaimer. Now let's get to it. Hey, real quick, before we get into this episode, my new and improved online birth course, The Birth with Power Pathway, is coming in May. If you want to feel calm, confident, and actually prepared for your hospital birth, this is for you. The best way to be the first to know when it drops, join my email list at drnicolerankins.com/email. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is episode number 179. I am so glad you are spending some of your time with me today. In this episode, we have a fantastic birth story episode with Deundria. Deundria is a registered nurse and a wife to a police officer, and she is now a mom of 3. As a family, they enjoy vacationing, outside play, and just spending time with each other. So in the episode, you're going to hear about Deundria's 3rd birth. This was her first birth that was unmedicated, and she took a different approach this time. She was very intentional about getting more educated so that she went into her birth more prepared. For this birth, she actually took my birth plan class and as a result learned some red flags about her doctor. She ended up changing from a doctor to a midwife practice in her 3rd trimester. She also had a doula this time, although her doula couldn't actually be in the hospital with her because she tested positive for COVID when she was admitted to the hospital. Despite that, however, she still had a beautiful unmedicated vaginal birth, and you are going to hear about all of that in the episode. Now, I mentioned that Deundria took my birth plan class, and you should too. It is called Make a Birth Plan the Right Way. And it is a step-by-step process of helping you make a birth plan or teaching you the exact way to make a birth plan so it actually works to help you have the birth that you want. Printing out a piece of paper from one of those templates or forms that you found online is well-meaning but completely inadequate. Showing up with that at the hospital is not the best strategy, the best way to help you have the birth that you want. Really, a birth plan or making a birth plan needs to be a process where you will understand that the people who are there for your birth, the doctors and the hospital where you give birth, actually support what is on that piece of paper. And if you wait until you go into labor to find that out, that is too late and it could potentially set you up for massive disappointment. So in my birth plan class, you learn specific questions to ask so that you will know whether or not the people who are there will support you. That's what Deundria found out about her doctor. That's why she switched. So you need to take the birth plan class. It's called Make a Birth Plan the Right Way. You can sign up for it at drnicolerankins.com/register. All right, let's get into the birth story episode with Deundria. Thank you, Deundria, for agreeing to come onto the podcast and navigating the little bit of tech challenges we had here recording. I am excited to have you come on and share your birth story.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
All right. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your family?
So, I am a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for about 8 years. Um, my husband is a police officer. We got married 6 years ago. We have 3 kids. Allison, she's 5. Kaysen's 3, and Asher is 6 months. We love to go outside and play kickball. Family time is huge for us.
Yeah.
Of course, we have a busy schedule, but we try to make do and have that time. So
Gotcha. And what kind of nurse are you?
I am mostly step down ICU, med surg, telemetry. Actually, I am an instructor now at a college.
Okay. So. Nice. That's a nice, I'm sure, maybe break, because step down folks were kind of getting slaughtered in COVID times.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So we are going to focus mostly on your recent birth, baby number 3. Just because that one was different than your other 2. So we'll talk about how things were a little different this time around. For this one, you had an unmedicated birth and you had a doula, and we'll get to that. But first, let's talk about what your pregnancy and your prenatal care was like. Did you see a physician or a midwife? How did you feel about the care you received during your pregnancy?
So when we first we decided when we got pregnant, we found out, we decided to go back to the doctor that delivered our first, because we just love the hospital. But I found this podcast, and actually I have always wanted to pursue something like more not as much intervention, and just that comfort of being with someone that truly listens and that you're comfortable with. And so midwife was always in the back of my head. And literally, I would say we went to our OB for about 37 weeks. And finally, I actually used a few of your brochures to see if it was a right fit for me.
Right.
And I was asking questions, and there was some red flags. And
what kind of red flags, if you remember?
Yeah. So I asked if I could have like maybe a little bit of popsicles or something to kind of moisten my mouth during delivery. Just something at my bedside. And he's like, absolutely not. Like, you can't anything to eat or drink once you come through the doors, pretty much, because of the risk of a possible C-section and the need to stay in PO.
Yeah, that's a red flag.
Yes, that was one. Another was delayed cord clamping. I really wasn't just so strict about it, but I just kind of wanted to have that time where by the time they get the baby on your chest, you're having that bonding time and cutting the cord kind of coexistently, I guess.
Right.
And he also kind of said that wasn't going to be feasible. The hospital is a firm believer on that, straight to the mother's chest, but it wasn't like he was truly interested in what I was asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then at 37 weeks, did you change?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So did you change to a midwife or another physician?
I changed to a midwife. So I did not know that the hospital that we were delivering at actually has a midwife team. And when I found out about it, I took my husband. We both went for a consult. He was kind of on the fence about it because he didn't know really how it worked. But our first consultation, we both were like, this is where we need to be. And we transitioned over to the midwives team at the hospital.
Gotcha. Were you worried at all about hurting your doctor's feelings or anything like that?
There was just some things that I truly wanted. I know this was going to be our last baby. And I felt like I deserved to have the experience that I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that kind of just ruled it all.
Gotcha.
And I went for it.
And was he ever, like, during your prenatal visits, was he ever mean or anything, or short, or was it just like, it wasn't until you kind of asked these more specific questions that you realized, hey, like, this is not gonna work?
He was never mean. That wasn't the case. It just there was just things like, even with pain management. I do remember I told him that I wanted to do different positions
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, and he was like, well, as long as the telemetry, not the telemetry, but the monitors don't become affected.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was always like, as long as that.
Gotcha.
And but he's still a really good doctor. I think overall, from what I was looking for, that just wasn't it.
Gotcha. And did you have any problems or issues during your pregnancy?
With with my other two pregnancies?
Yeah, with any of the three, like any blood pressure issues or issues
I
with the
did.
baby's growth or anything like that? I guess more specifically
did.
with this third pregnancy that made him was there a reason why he would have a heightened concern at all?
Yes, I did have blood pressure issues in the past. So the first, it was pretty intense, where my daughter's heart rate dropped, my blood pressure skyrocketed. I couldn't, I wasn't, I had stayed at a 6 for a very, very long time.
Okay.
They actually rushed me to the emergency, to have a C-section. But then by the time I got an epidural, ended up getting an epidural, and by the time I got to the C-section room, everything was fine. I could still push and I could still feel everything, but it's like my blood pressure stabilized and her heart rate came back to where it needed to be.
Okay.
So that was the first time. Now, the second time, it was pretty fast. I was able to, the drive was about 40. We live in a rural area, and so the drive is always about 45 minutes to an hour with all of the hospitals that I've delivered.
Okay.
And by the time we got there, I was at an 8.
Okay.
My second one. And everything was progressing, but then they restricted me to the bed. I couldn't move. I couldn't get up. My back was killing me. I kept asking to move. They just really wouldn't work with me in moving. And I became to where I just stayed at an 8 for, like, I'd say 5 hours. Got the epidural again because I just couldn't take it anymore. And then half of my body was numb. The other half wasn't.
Ooh.
And so that they kept tilting me and trying to find a way. It was just a bad experience. Both times was a bad experience.
Gotcha. So you definitely wanted something different this time.
Yeah, that second time I actually had to get on MAG for my blood pressure. It was just it was pretty high in the 200s to the point where I had to go home on blood pressure medication. So
okay,
it definitely was there in my history.
Gotcha. But during your pregnancy, or especially I guess during this third pregnancy, did you have any issues with blood pressures? And I take it that midwives still felt comfortable taking care of you.
No, I actually, all the times I did not have blood pressure issues until labor. So even with this time, I did not have any blood pressure issues. It was stable. They had me on the baby aspirin, for, prophylactically, but other than that, I didn't have anything wrong.
Okay. Let's talk about something most pregnant women aren't getting enough of: omega-3 DHA. The recommendation is over 200 milligrams a day, but less than 5% of pregnant women in the U.S. meet that. That's one of the reasons I love Ritual's Essential Prenatal. It has 350 milligrams of vegan DHA plus other key nutrients like methylated folate and choline to support baby's neural tube development. As an OBGYN, I appreciate that Ritual goes beyond the basics. The formula is science-backed, third-party tested for heavy metals and microbes, and every ingredient is traceable. And the delayed release design, it's gentle on the stomach, something that really matters, especially if there's trouble with nausea during pregnancy. You deserve to know exactly what you're putting into your body, especially when it comes to prenatal multivitamins. And with Ritual's dedication to traceable science and sourcing, you always will. See for yourself with 25% off your first month at ritual.com/Dr. Nicole. Start Ritual or add Essential Prenatal to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/Dr. Nicole for 25% off your first month. Okay. So then at 37 weeks, you switched to the midwives. And then from there, how did things go?
I think it went very well. They already had a lot of things on my birth plan in place. There was really nothing. I would ask them, okay, do you do this? You do that? And then they just would say, yeah, that's what we do. That's what we've always done.
Okay. So it really felt smooth going forward.
It did. Even like the going into like the appointments, it was so different, like compared to getting up on a medical table at the midwife's clinic. They had a couch and it was like calming music. I mean, it was just very different, just a different take on prenatal care.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what did you do to prepare for your birth?
I literally listened to the podcast every day, all day. I mean, so much. Like I said, I live in a rural community. And so, whenever I drive to work as well, about an hour commute, to and back. So that's 2 hours in the car. And literally I would just binge your, the podcast. I love the birthing stories. There was a lot of things like whenever I was actually thinking about transferring to my OB, to the midwives, there was a session that you spoke on with a birthing story, and she moved at 40 weeks, and I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
So it's possible. So, that is really what I did. I don't really think I did much other than like a lot of your pain management things on your website and the birthing plan. I listened to that and created that. And then your podcast. Yeah.
Nice. So what are some things that you wanted for your birth?
Yeah. So, the main thing is I wanted it to be, no medication. I have used the epidural. I used the epidural like twice. And I was like, I really don't want to use that again. It was just not a good experience for me. Even with my first, I really didn't have like, it just maybe knocked off the edge of my blood pressure and her heart rate. But other than like pain management, it really wasn't helpful. And then the second time it was just dreadful. It was horrible. So I wanted to definitely find a way to where I didn't have to use that. And so that's when the doula came into play. I heard from all your podcasts that's a really good thing to have, especially going into a non-medicated birth.
Right.
And so I got a doula.
And at what point did you hire a doula? How far along were you?
I actually reached out to my doula, I would say 4 months in.
Okay, so pretty early.
Yes, and that's about the time I found your podcast as well. So about 4 months in. So we got a really good rapport with each other, which I think was very important. I felt very comfortable with her.
Gotcha. And so you felt like she was a good resource for you as you were going through your pregnancy also?
Absolutely. Absolutely. She gave me a huge handbook of different positions and pretty much gave me the idea of how it would work with her plan of coming in and using my husband to help calm me, relax me, massage me, even herbal teas. She actually gave me like an herbal tea to kind of help um, the red raspberry tea.
Uh-huh.
She gave me that, and I could start drinking that after I started the third trimester to help my uterine contract the way it should. She also gave me like the herbal bath, just so many different things that I did not know about, and I had to do research on. But she was a very good resource for me. So with those things.
Gotcha. Nice, nice, nice. So let's get into what your labor and birth was like. How did that happen?
Okay. So, and going back to your other question, water is also what I wanted, by the way.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Definitely. And my hospital had the water tub, but they weren't able to deliver in the water tub. But you could do all your labor in there. So, it was a month. Asher came a month early. I woke up one morning and literally just felt a gush in the bed, and I said, "Wow, it's time." So my husband started freaking, and he's like, "Okay, I got this. I got the kids," and he was getting the kids ready. It's so much different having children and going into labor. You definitely have to have a plan. So we don't live far from my parents, and they came down to grab the babies, and so we could go ahead and head out. The only thing was I wasn't having contractions.
Okay.
So I called. She said just to hang tight. My doula, hang tight. But then she notified my midwife, and she said, "Well, this was before I got the strep test." And so I needed to go ahead and come in because I had ruptured my membranes, and they need to come and give me the antibiotics. And so,
got it. So wait a minute. How many weeks were you again when you transferred to the midwives?
Oh gosh. Hold on. Let me see. It had to have been 34 actually.
Maybe 34. Okay.
Yeah, because I was early.
Okay. But so you only must have had just a couple visits with them.
Yes, I only had probably like 3 visits.
Okay.
So I guess it could have been even 32. I just know I was a month early. I wasn't even 36. I was 35 weeks whenever Asher came.
Okay. So you weren't having contractions, but they said because you were early that you needed to go ahead and come on in.
Yes.
Okay. And did you say, was it your doula who called your midwife, or was it you who called the midwife?
It was my doula.
Huh. Okay.
Yes. She has a very good connection with all the midwives there. They could be friends. I don't know. But she was like, let me call. Let me see who's on call, and I'll let you know what to do. And she called me back and told me that I needed to go ahead and come in because I hadn't got that test yet.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wasn't having contractions. By the time I got in the car, we decided to stop by Whataburger and grab some food. Of course, Whataburger, when we got in the line, I started contractions. So my husband's like, great. So that was that. And so we got food and we started heading to the hospital. And at that moment, I was having contractions. So by the time I got to the hospital, I walked in. Everything was fine. I had a little towel in between my legs. I felt like a weirdo, but because it was just constant.
Right.
And so I got up to the OB floor, and I told him, I said, I'm in labor. My water broke. By the time we got in the room, my contractions stopped all of a sudden. They weren't present really anymore. I really didn't feel anything. And of course, they check you for COVID. So I got my COVID test, and they came back and they said that I was positive for COVID.
Oh.
So
Oh,
everything changed after that. They wouldn't allow my doula to come in. And
okay.
I was really upset about that because
I bet.
she was my comforter. My mom couldn't even come in. It was just me and my husband. People were coming in with like these, the yellow gowns, and it was like I had this horrible disease. It just felt like I was just yuck.
Oh,
Um, and so that was kind of like, oh my God, I cannot believe
right,
this. Went into labor a month early, and now I'm positive for COVID and
right,
can't leave, and my husband can't leave, and
right.
everybody in here. So,
Were you
yeah.
having any symptoms at all?
So, a week before this happened, I had this crazy like sinus thing, and it was enough to like, I just felt so tired. I didn't know if that was it. That's all it was. It was just sinus.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like I didn't have a fever. I didn't have the chills. I didn't have any of the symptoms that you would think. That's all it was sinus pressure, and I just wanted to sleep.
Sure.
And I
Okay.
guess that's kind of where it was.
Uh-huh.
But I had no symptoms at all going into the hospital.
Gotcha. And had you been exposed to it that you knew of?
Not that I know of. But
Okay.
I'm a nurse, and so
Yeah, so of course. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So then that obviously threw you for a huge loop. Was your doula able to provide any support for you?
For the most part, we just text back and forth, and her and my husband talked on the phone,
Okay.
and she would tell us what to do, how to apply pressure to the bag. She sent us um, like photos of where to position his hands on my back, because I was telling
Right.
her that everything was just the counter pressure on my back was very helpful. She talked to us about when to get in the tub, and if I'll be and when I need to get out the tub, which the nurses was talking to me about that as well. But that's kind of our communication
Gotcha.
at this point was by.
Gotcha.
She was actually supposed to. She was also a birth photographer. I wasn't able,
Mm.
unfortunately. Um, so anyway, it was something. So we got the antibiotics started. I still have not went back into contractions yet, and they told me we may have to start pitocin, and I was like, we are not starting pitocin. We are not starting pitocin. I actually had pitocin my first, and it was brutal. I think it was worse than contractions for me personally. I was like, I don't want to start pitocin. So
Right.
I said, what are my options? They said, well, we can start you on a breast pump, and maybe that'll help with the contractions. I said, okay, let's try it. So I actually started pumping, and I would say probably an hour in, I started having contractions again. It activated them back up. I was like, thank God. So, but then when they came like vengeance.
Okay.
So I was getting antibiotics. I was pumping. I started having contractions, and I went into labor, as it was like full blown contracted labor. At
You
that
said
moment,
after about an hour of the
after about
breast pump.
after about an
Okay.
hour with the breast pump, I went into labor. When I got there, I was at a 6, and literally between from 6 to in 3 hours, I was pushing
Okay.
after the contraction started back.
So that was pretty fast.
It was very, very fast, very fast. I almost gave up. I was like, I may need something. My husband was there. He was so helpful. I wanted to get in the tub, but they wouldn't allow me. They would not allow me because of something. I cannot remember why, but I couldn't get in the water, and I really wanted
Okay.
to get in the water. But finally, they were like, okay, you can get in the water. So it takes forever for those tubs to fill up.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I got in the water, it took 10 minutes to fill up the tub. And I was like, can I get in the water? Can I get in the water? They say, yes, you can finally get in the water. So I got in the water. I literally was in there for 3 minutes and got out the water.
And it was like, I got to push or.
Because they told me you cannot have this baby in the tub. If you start to feel the urge, you need to get out. And so I got in there, and I guess it must have relaxed me just enough to be ready. So I said, okay, I got to get back out. My midwife came in. She was in and out throughout the whole thing. That's another thing that was different for me. I never seen my OB in either first and second time until it was closer to birthing. Like they'd come maybe for a little bit at the beginning when I first got there, but then I never really saw them again.
Right. But this time your midwife
the midwives, it was
they were a lot more present
with the nurses, like just constant, which I really appreciated.
Okay. Especially since your doula wasn't there. So then what was pushing like for you?
Pushing, I would say I pushed 5 times.
Okay.
Yes. The experience was like night and day when it comes to going toward this approach. And I'm so thankful I had the guts to just advocate for myself if that was the experience that I wanted. Advocate for myself for that to happen. And so I pushed 5 times. Baby came out. I think she had to tilt my pelvis just a little bit, and everything was great. He came out. He was 6 pounds, 10 ounces a month early. His score was, I can't remember. I don't know how. It's been a while.
Yeah.
OB. It was high. It was one of the highest scores. They said that he was perfect. It was great.
Nice. So completely different than your other 2 experiences.
Oh my gosh. It was so different.
In a good way, of course.
In a very good way. Yes.
Yeah. Do you regret like not doing it sooner, trying to do it this way? Or were you just happy that you had this type of experience?
I overall, I'm happy. I'm happy that they're all here. You know, I have 3 beautiful babies. But I just wish that I had the education. I educated myself so much with this pregnancy. I wish I would have done that with the others instead of just kind of going through the motions. I think that that's huge, is educating yourself and all your options. And even postpartum, it was so simple. And to top it all off, I didn't have blood pressure issues. Yeah, I mean, that's so strange. It's like, you know, I've had blood pressure issues these last 2 times, but with this time, I didn't. My blood pressure was fine. We stayed an extra 3 nights just because Asher had bilirubin level. The jaundice, he had jaundice.
Sure.
But that was with all of my babies. So he was just with them. They were all like that. So, and they wanted to watch him closely because he was technically a preemie because he wasn't at that, 36 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
okay. But he was able to go home with you.
Yes, he was able to go home. He never went to the IC, the PD ICU.
Yeah.
He never went to NICU. He never went to the NICU. He stayed in there with me. The only thing, like I said before, was we just couldn't leave and nobody could come in because I was considered COVID positive. So, but thankfully they just kept us in our room, including the baby.
Okay.
And even the doctor, the pediatrician, he was actually happy at one point that I did have COVID because he said that the antibodies was transferable into the baby.
Gotcha.
Depending on how long prior to me getting there that I had it. So
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then, so then afterwards, you didn't have any symptoms or issues or anything from the COVID?
No, I had
Okay.
no issues from the COVID, thankfully.
Did your husband ever test positive?
No, he never
Okay.
tested positive. Literally, we were just very surprised
Right.
that positive whenever we got there. I honestly think I had the actual virus the week before, and it was just me still being positive.
Uh-huh. That's probably exactly what happened. And then did you breastfeed?
I did. I breastfed. I breastfed all three. And with Asher, I went straight to it as usual. He latched. It was perfect. I did use the consultant, the breastfeeding consultant, always a good refresher to see her tips. But she came in and he was perfect, and she's like, well, there's nothing for me to do. So he latched good, and he's breastfeeding till this day.
Okay. And how old is he now?
He is now 6 months.
Okay. All
He
right.
just
All
started.
right. Awesome. So, although things didn't go exactly as you intended with the COVID and your baby coming early, when you look back, how do you feel about things?
Well, I'm just glad it all worked out. I was very scared when I went into when my water broke a month early. It was very
Mm-hmm.
scary. Um, I just didn't know. I didn't know
Right.
what was going to happen. And then even with just everything with the COVID and me not being able to have my doula in there, I just kind of broke down a little bit at the hospital just because. But then I remembered. I remember honestly your podcast. I remember how it says, you have a plan, but at the same time be open-minded that things may not go as planned, and to adapt and to adjust and stay focused. So overall, looking back, I think I wouldn't have had it any other way. Of course, I would have wanted certain things, but it all worked out. At one point, I was able to still get a lot on my birthing plan. I was able to have a child, my last child, non-medicated, and use water therapy, and have my husband present, and midwives be available and at hand. I mean, those are a lot of things that I feel like worked for my good.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what is the one piece of advice or one thing you would tell women as they get ready for their birth?
Educate.
I
Educate.
thought you were going to say that.
Education is so big, and I wish I would have known sooner. And I have multiple friends that were pregnant with me, and I would just say, hey, I seen this on this podcast. I'll send it to them. Or there was a lot of questions out there, and it's so simple just to kind of go with the motions. But if you were to educate yourself and truly understand how things work, even in your body, like there was one thing that you said on your podcast about pain that really kind of set with me till this day, and that's, this is a different type of pain. And if you readapt your mindset on the pain of birthing compared to hitting your big toe on furniture, like it's two separate different things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing. This pain is good. It's going to lead to something good. And so just those little things can change your mindset. And so I absolutely get into something, listen to a podcast, do a birthing class, include your husband. That's huge. Or whoever your support system is. Those are the things that I guess. Yeah.
Yes. Love it. And y'all, I promise I did not pay her to say any of those things. All righty. Well, thank you, Deundria, for agreeing to come onto the podcast. Where can women connect with you? And you can say nowhere, totally up to you.
I'm on Instagram I don't even know what my actual name is.
Oh, that's okay. We can put it in. We can ask you later and put it in the show notes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you taking the time to come on and share your story of how this like beautiful baby Asher was born.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Wasn't that a great episode? I am so glad that things turned out well, despite the fact that she was diagnosed with COVID in the hospital and that she didn't have any long-term issues with having COVID. Now, after every episode where I have a guest on, I do something called Dr. Nicole's Notes, where I discuss my top takeaways from the conversation. Here are my Dr. Nicole's Notes from my conversation with Deundria. Number 1, nice and supportive ain't the same thing, y'all. Okay. Just because your doctor is nice doesn't mean that they will be supportive of the things that you want for your birth. I've seen so many people get tricked by this where they're like, oh, the person is nice, so you just assume that they will automatically be supportive. And that is not the case. I think sometimes social media makes it out to be like people who don't support you are like they're villains and they're terrible and they force you to do these things in labor and they force you to stay in bed and they force you to do this and that. But that's not actually how it typically goes. Most people are pretty reasonable, and it's actually not that common that folks are going to be straight up like mean or forceful like that. It's typically that people are relatively nice. They're not screaming or yelling, but they're not necessarily supportive of the things that you want. So in order to understand if they are supportive, you really need to ask those questions, which brings me to point number 2, and that is how getting educated can make all of the difference, okay? Getting educated is so, so, so important. And yes, you are doing that through this podcast. Yes, yes, yes. So I'm glad that you are listening to the podcast, but you really need to do things like take it a step further, do some great childbirth education. At a minimum, take my birth plan class. Again, it's Make a Birth Plan the Right Way. You can sign up for it at drnicolerankins.com/register. But get educated because it really can make all the difference in your birth experience. And then the final point that I want to make, and this may seem a little bit out of left field, but I see, or I've had a lot of folks on the podcast, not a lot, but enough, and just like talking to people say that they have switched from physician to midwifery care. And that is perfectly great. I obviously support midwives. I work side by side with midwives on a regular basis. I am an OB hospitalist, and I work side by side with certified nurse midwife hospitalist. I've trained with midwives. I fully support midwives 1000%. They provide excellent care. But the thing is, midwives are not always readily available. There are lots of places where you won't have access to a midwife. And quite frankly, although there certainly is a lot of push for having more midwives, I can anticipate that the OBGYN specialty field organizations will push back to some degree because they don't want to give up completely taking care of obstetrics. Like, I don't ever see that happening where we ever go to a model like, say, Europe, for instance, where there is primarily midwifery care for low risk people and doctors are only for high risk patients. I just don't see that happening. And even if it does happen, it's going to be decades before that happens because of education and training and all of that good, great stuff. So I say all that to say, if you can't find a midwife, then try to find a doctor who has midwife-like qualities, all right? You may not necessarily find a doctor who has like long appointments where you can talk and have conversations, but you can find doctors who will be supportive of the things that you want for your birth. I am proud to call myself someone who is a doctor that has midwife-like qualities. As a matter of fact, I think that is what is going to be a temporary solution or something that needs to happen regardless, is that we adopt some of the things of midwifery care into our regular obstetric care for low-risk patients. So you can find a doctor who has midwife-like qualities, who listens to you, who's patient, who gives you time, who answers your questions. So if you can't find a midwife, look for a doctor with midwife-like qualities. All right, so there you have it. Do me a favor, share this podcast with a friend. Sharing is caring, and sharing helps me to reach and serve more pregnant people, which is at the heart, soul, and passion of my work. And I appreciate your help in doing that. Also, subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcast or wherever you are listening to podcasts right now. And if you feel so inclined, leave me a review in Apple Podcast. I read those reviews. I love to hear what you think about the show. And it also helps the show to grow, helps other women find the show. And we can also continue this conversation on Instagram. I am on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Rankins. I'm also on the TikTok at Dr. Nicole Rankins as well, although I'm much more on Instagram, but I've started being on TikTok a bit too. You can follow me both places at Dr. Nicole Rankins. So that is it for this episode. Do come on back next week, and remember that you deserve a beautiful pregnancy and birth.
Hey, Kristen, how's it tracking?
With Carvana Value Tracker.
What else?
Oh, it's tracking. In fact, Value Surge Alert trucks up 2.5%. Vans down 1.7%.
Just as predicted.
Mm-hmm.
So, we gonna...
I don't know. Could sell, could hold.
The power to always know our car's worth.
Exhilarating, isn't it?
Tracking.
Always know your car's worth with Carvana Value Tracker.